Welcome back. I told you I would give you a short tutorial on how I sharpen, and this is my Burke system. I use this Burke primarily for most things because it runs at 1750 RPMs and I'm usually in a hurry. I try to save all my sharpening until one time, so if I've got more than one tool, I don't want to run back and forth to this. This Burke has 3 wheels. I took the other wheel off. I had another one here. I took it off and had another one out here. I took it off as well, mainly because I didn't need it. This one, I don't even know if this is a Burke or if it's a Burke knockoff. It was given to me by Cleve Taylor, and he had an extra one, and when he retired from carving, he gave me this one, and I'm grateful to do that. Runs at 1750. This one has leather. This one has 2 wheels, 2 sandpaper wheels. This one has 180, and this one has 320. And when I glued them on there, I took a file, and as they ran, I smoothed them down so when they're spinning, they don't take off much metal at any one time. I only use these rarely. I only use these about once every 3 or 4 months when I've dropped something. I don't really have to shape my tools very much, so I use the leather wheel. Leather wheel spins at 1750 RPMs. And every once in a while I'll charge it with some kind of compound. I don't need much. And you replace this wheel about every couple, 2 or 3 years because they get grooves in them. I don't know if you can see those, but they'll get kind of chewed up in some places. And this one's long, well past needing to be replaced. I'll probably have to do that here real soon. Once I'm done honing, I turn to a buffing. I have a quarter cable. This one here spins at, let me find it, 2,000 to 3,000 RPMs per minute. But you can adjust this one, and this is about, I'd say it's about 2,000, I think is what the low end is, and the high end is 34. They say you have to spin it at 34 to get the metal off, but I don't do it all the time. Sometimes I do it about halfway up, because if you're doing this side, it's easy to lay it on there and anchor your hand right here. When you're doing this side, it's hard to, and a lot of times it wants to grab your tool. Excuse me. And so that's what I buff it with when I'm done. I've recently, some time ago, bought a system by a guy named Tom Ellis. Tom Ellis has a sharpener system. He's made it from, excuse me, I gotta, pardon me. He's got a system that has 2 wheels. This one is metal with grit in it, and this one is the other. I'm gonna pull this off. It comes with a removable disc that goes on it. It's made out of MDF, so you could sharpen on this side, leather on this side, and then it's got another wheel as well. And I think one of these wheels is 600, one's 1200, and I think this is the 600 and this one is the 1200. But the beauty of this thing is it goes one way and then switches to go the opposite way. So for those of you that have a hard time doing it backwards from the way you're used to, so when I lay a knife here, the sharp edge this way, the leading edge away, lay it there, sharpen it up. And then when you got that one side, stop, flip it around and go the other way. So I can lay it that way with the trailing edge going that way. It doesn't spin very fast. This is only about 17 to 34. I don't know exactly what it is. Tom makes those from an old massager. Let me see if there's a sticker on here. If he's put a sticker on here, and I don't know the speed on it. Hang on just a second. I'm finagling around here. Looks like the portable massager says it goes. Does not say. Anyway, I think when I bought it from him, he said it goes about 17 RPMs. It might be more than that, I don't know. But anyway, so when you're sharpening or when you're honing, it's really hard to burn your tool. Even if you're laying it on here, it doesn't take off much metal at any one time. The main part I like about it is slow, because it doesn't have a tendency to grab. If you're using the Burke running at 3450, I think is what it is. I don't know, I can't see the RPM, 1725, sorry. 1725, it'll grab you. And if you're not real careful, it'll It'll get your attention. This one doesn't do that. It's portable. You can carry it with you. It weighs, I don't know, maybe 20 pounds at the most. And so whenever I travel somewhere, whenever I go give a demonstration, this is an easy way for me to show what I sharpen with. And it allows me to be able to transport that from place to place and show when I'm sharpening these knives with a bevel, I can show that I can lay that bevel completely down on the piece and I don't have to worry about it. Anyway, you find these on eBay. I think I looked at one this morning, and the one wheel is $200, and so it's not very cheap, but it is the one that I use mostly when I'm doing sharpening. I do the Burke when I've got to do a lot because I'm in a hurry. When I've just got to do one or two, I use this Tom's. The other thing I've been using lately by hand, if I've got to do it by hand, and this little jewel here, it's made by our club president named Larry Chris. Larry puts a 400 piece of sandpaper on one end, and a 600 piece on the other end, an 800 on this end, and then a piece of leather. And actually, this is one of the older ones. Larry made some new ones, and these are now, let me see. This one is 1200. This one is 600. So you got 1200, 600, you've got 1500, and you've got a piece of leather. This is a good thing to do by hand because you can stick this in your bag, and depending on how much you need to hone, you can just hone the leather, use the leather, and if you need to, you can use the sandpaper that's on here. And that sandpaper at 1200, it's not going to take off much. Or 1500, sorry. It's not going to take off much, but this is what Larry's using. If you get a hold of me, I have a few of them for sale. If you want one, let me know. It also comes with a, comes with a little jar of this liquid stuff that you put on there a little bit. It's a compound, and I think it's dish soap, Dawn dish soap added with it. Allows you to sharpen up whatever you need to sharpen. That's what I use. I don't use any other thing to sharpen my tools. Hopefully that helps you a little bit. If not, you got an insight into how I sharpen and how we sharpen here. So let's get back to carving. And we are back. I think this is video number 6. I looked at that video last time and I realized I'm holding this a lot of times so you can't see the face. So I want to get back up under there and see that, so you can see what I'm doing. That's one of the problems with doing one of these. I'm going to shorten this nose just a little bit because it'll give me a bigger mouth mound to work with. But just know that the shorter you go, you can't make it any longer. There's no going back. I mean, yeah, you can glue some stuff on there, but it ain't going to look right. I'm going to take my gouge, take a smaller gouge, and I'm just going to go straight across the bottom of that nose. You know, there's one thing about drawing it, and there's another thing about cutting it. Once you cut it, it's final, but once you draw it, you can at least adjust it. Okay, I like that. We're going to come in here and make that cut for the bottom of the nose, at least where we want it. So can you see that? We don't want that flat nose, so we're going to end up thinning this nose quite a bit. And so one of the things that I do, come in here and cut a little bit more out of that bridge of the nose. And I'm just going to lay my knife right here on the side, and I'm just going to take that off to make it more of a wedge shape, more of a triangle. Your nose looks like a triangle. This is just giving it some shape, and we'll give it some details here in a little bit. But I just want to get that rough shape of the nose. I want both sides to be about the same angle. Gosh, I'm having a hard time hanging on to that today. I know what it is. It's almost Christmas. I'm getting excited about all the gifts under the tree. Anyway, so there's the nose, and there's the width of it. And generally, if you go to the wing of the nose and go up on an eye, it's usually right in the middle of the eyeball. Just giving you an idea where all those things go. And so here you have to make some decisions about a lot of things. And one of those is, what kind of face is it going to look like? Because he's looking up this way, and if you do this with your face, turn your head and look that way, you'll notice that this cheek comes up a little bit. So this cheek is going to be a little bit higher than this one. So as I'm looking over there, everything's stretched that way. So I'm going to trim this cheek down just a little bit. I'll need a little bit more wood later when I get to it. But because this one comes up higher, more than likely so is the cheek. And so this one from the Nares, I know there's a more anatomical name for that, but you know what I'm talking about. This is going to come down here like this. And in this one, we're going to have, from the Nares, come up a little bit more, and then down. So that one's slightly higher than this one and has more of an angle. And that one comes up this way. Okay, so let's work on that nose. Now, I know a lot of carvers will come in here with a gouge and come right in here and make that Nares out there. Some will come in here with a little bit bigger one. You can certainly do that with any tool you want. I'm going to, I could certainly make that a great big one. I'm going to draw this out first because I want the Nares right about right here. See how that nose is going to shape up? And so a lot of times what I'll do, I know that's where the nose is going to be, so I'm going to come in here with, you can use a knife or you can use a V-tool. It's entirely up to you. If you use a knife, it's a sharper cut. If you use a V-tail, it's a little bit softer. If you use a soft V, it's even softer. But I'm just going to come in here and cut up along that line, up to where the nose is. Split out a little bit, no big deal, because that was going to come off anyway. So I'll reverse it so I can clean up that cut and make it deeper. So there's one side of that mouth mound carved in. I'm going to go ahead and deepen that. Come in here and stop cut it. So I make one cut because there's a chip right here I want out. I make one cut here, and I'm not done because I haven't shaped that nose yet. Second cut, third cut. I've started to give him a little bit of a cheekbone here to play around with. That cheekbone, a high point on that cheekbone. If you'll feel your cheekbone, it's out here at the outside of your eye, somewhere right around here. So if I hope Dave doesn't mind, I'm using his little tool. But look where the cheekbone is out here at the edge of the eye. And so take that into consideration when you go to make this cut. That cheekbone is going to be cut down in a little bit from here. Got it? Okay. From there, I'm going to take that corner of that nose and I'm going to go right up into that nose. Understand that we're going to have a sharp cut we've got to clean up later. But at least now I've got a little bit of shape to that nose. I'm still flat on the end. We'll address that a little bit later, but I'm just trying to get, as Harley Refsall says, we're getting the gross anatomy, the large parts that we want to put in play. We'll do the same thing here. I'm going to make a cut across here, a little flatter than that other one, because this eye is coming up a little bit, and then a little more to the outside. And then we'll go in and we'll make that stop cut here over to the nose, and we'll make that stop cut here down to the cheek, and then we'll make that stop cut here and cut that in. We just want to take that chip out right there under the nose. Clean it up. Okay, so this one droops a little more than that one. In fact, I want to come out here a little bit more. Take that out. bring that down just a little bit more on that droopy side. I'm sure there's a better name for that, but you know what I'm talking about. Now we've got that mouth mound rounded, and understand that the nose, when you make a carving, what you don't want is from here out to be nose, and from here out to be nose, and from here back to be face. You want that nose to look like it's an integral part of the face. In other words, don't just stick it on there like it's something you glued on. Make it fit, make it all fit in to the size of the face. Now, going back to my gouge, I want to deepen that groove right there, just a little bit. And that also helps me take care of that sharp line I made when I made with a knife. And so we're shaping the nares and narrowing down the nose. Now, if you look at some other carvings, and I'll grab one. This is one I think I showed you earlier in the video series. This is a Cleve Taylor head, and you see how it comes to, it's a triangle. There's a triangle here, and it's also a triangle here. And so that's what we want to do, is keep that triangle shape to it. So we're going to do that to this one as well, although I like a big nose, as you heard me say earlier in the video series. I really like a big nose. Now I could have come in here with one of these and made that cut right there. If you see, if I make that cut right there, there's a cut all the way up into here and a cut all the way down into here. If I do it with a smaller one, it's a little more narrow, but it's out farther because those wings are not very far separated. Anyway, I'm going to use a gouge because I want to narrow that nose, and I really don't want a lot of sharpness to it. Noses are mostly cartilage. When you look at the nose, you have a part of the nose that comes out, and at some point your skull does not, the bone of your nose stops about halfway out there. So that's one thing you've got to take into consideration. I'm probably always going to make big noses just because I'm afraid I'm going to cut them off. And so I'm just trimming this nose down. As I get a piece carved, I'm just trimming it down. And at this point, I'm going to make a cut down, just so the nose is not so flat. And from here out, about where the bone starts, I like a lot of my cowboys to have some shape to their nose, because, you know, by the time you've been bucked off a few things, and maybe it's a bar stool and maybe it's a cow, why you ride a cow, I don't know, but your nose is gonna take a few whacks along the way. And so that nose is starting to look like I want. It's still not done because I got to cut off all these lines. But we're working on getting that nose shaped up so we can get the rest of the eye shaped up too. And I notice this side's a little wider, so I'll go in here and I'll cut a little bit off of there and make it round it out a little bit, and that looks better. This side's a little low. That looks a little better. Okay, you see where we're going. Now we've got a mouth mound that we can work on to make it more shapely. So we're going to want that mouth mound to come all the way around. And at this point, I've still left enough that if I wanted to do a mustache, I could. But what I want you to notice is that I don't have the nose starting here and the face going back here. The face comes all the way around. If you trace around, or if you look at somebody, half of the nose is in the face and the other half is sticking out. So I've got a lot of stuff here that I could take off to thin down that mouth mound. And because we want him to be a skinny cowboy, we're going to come back in here and take a little more off. And then we're going to take our fishtail gouge and kind of shape that cheekbone. So I'm just going back to the side of the face, thinning that out, and thinning that out as well. Okay, now I want to deepen that mouth mound because I got a cheekbone right here and I've got a mouth mound right there, and so I'm going to take off that sliver of wood. See how we deepen that around there? Same thing over here. Come along up that line we've already cut. Take it over to the nose. Cut right up under the nose. Deepen that. That allows us to take a little bit of the nose off, at least under the nose, because we want a rounded structure. We don't want a lot of angular planes, especially if we're going to put a smile in there. See how that nose is starting to shape up on that face? I like the way it's coming out. Hopefully you do too. If not, make your own the way you want to make it, and it's your carving, as I've said before. Okay. We still have not made a lot of indentations here in the face because those eyes stick out quite a way. So I'm going to come back with my gouge, and I'm about done using this one because I'm going to switch to a smaller one. But I'm just going to deepen that eye socket in the corners. One of the tricks I learned a long time ago was if you turn someone sideways and you put a pencil down there where the tear duct is, you should not see the lead sticking out of that pencil. And so that's one of the things you got to take into consideration. I'm going to deepen that by going to a smaller gouge. That gouge I had earlier, that was a number, I don't know whether that's a 9 or a 6, but it says 9 or 6. Anyway, I'm going to say it's a 6. This one is about the same one, but it's much smaller. And so the thickness on this, or the width on this one, for Americans, it is going to be about 1/8 of an inch. For metric, it's about 4 millimeters. And I'm going to use this to further define the nose and the cheek area. And then I'm going to come in here at the very top of that eyebrow, very top of that eye socket. Let me get a little closer. Very top of that eye socket, I want to make a deep cut right in there. Can you see that cut right there? I made this cut here, and I made it deep in there because that's the depth of the eye socket. Still not deep enough because I want him to have kind of a shallow but sunken look. And so I'm just going to keep cutting that because that's going to be the corner of the eye. I don't know how close you can get to see what's going on there, but I'm going really deeply in that corner. Going to do the same thing here. We go up the side of the nose from the Nares up. Again, that's one of the problems with doing one of these carvings and demoing it, because there's not a lot of room to look at in there, and so you can't really see down in there very well. But I've done the same thing here. I've made that not quite as much here. I've made that indentation down there. And what stands it out is if you see this nose, this got some sharp edges. I'm going to cut those sharp edges off up to that cut. Smooth these sharp edges down. And then separate a little bit more right up there where that nose bridge is. Look at that. He's got quite the forehead now, which we can cut back or we can leave alone. Anyway, I've got my eye sockets drilled down in here. I'm going to follow that line, and normally I droop that down here, but because he's looking this way, I want to leave that. He still have the bone structure. Bone structure doesn't change on the eyebrow. It goes nowhere. It stays there. What happens is the skin around it. And so we're going to leave that a little bit high because I still want that eye to poke in there. And we're going to do the same thing here, but this one now is pointed. If you remember, it's pointed here and pointed here, where the eyelids come together, the upper eyelid and the bottom eyelid. They come together. Out here, they're opened up. And so I won't go real deep in there, but I will take off a little bit of that way. So you get an idea. I can draw that back in there, but I'm not gonna draw much more in there. A little fuzzy here I'll take out. So you get an idea of where my eye socket's going to go and what I'm going to do with the eyes. I'm going to go back to that gouge that I had, that file, and there's usually a separation right here. So where the hat is, you have a separation between this eyebrow and this eyebrow. A lot of ways to cut that out. I generally use this number 9, number 6, this file, and I'm going to go up to the side of the nose, or front of the nose, and I'm going to start chipping that away. See how I got that back in there? I'm going to chip it away a little bit more. Get that piece. Get that little piece out of there. See how hard it is sometimes to get up out here under that hat? Come back down here and do the same thing here to the bottom with that eyebrow. So now I've separated those two eyebrows. Let me get something better to point with. I've separated those two eyebrows right there. So I got a separation right here. What I like to do then is take that small tool and come back in and separate them down toward the eye. Just gives a little bit more detail. As I mentioned earlier, it's the detail on a carving like this that people pick them up and they start laughing. Because, you know, this fella looks like somebody you might know. This fella looks like somebody you might know, and then you start thinking good things about that person that you already know. Heck, this fella, one eye closed and head's coming out. One eye beat up shut and the other eye wide open. That might be somebody you know too. So it's always, for me, I get a kick out of it, whether I make a sale or not. I get a kick out of somebody who looks at that and starts smiling and thinks that's pretty good. If you notice the cuts that I've made these very similar. I'm going to move this one back a little bit. Move it up and back. So I'm just going to take my knife and come back in here at a different angle and take off more wood so that it looks like it's higher. I want to make it look higher, and I'll take these sharp edges off as well. But I want it to look higher than the other one because he's squinting off this way. Take a little bit of that cheek down and a little bit of this cheek down. Hold on to that, buddy. Hold on. And then a little bit of this because I left high there, so I got to come down here and trim that out as well. So there should be a transition between the cheek and the jaw here. Same thing here. Got a little bit there. Take that off. Come on. Trim that hard edge off of that jaw. Trim the other hard edge off of that jaw. I like him. I really like this fella. Okay, I told you to sharpen your tools before you started, and I hope you did, but we're going to give this guy a smile. And so I've got an open smile on the guy we're using as an example. Just to make it simple, we'll just keep his smile a little simple. You know, he's just a happy fella. And this one's going to come up a little bit because he's looking off to the side. So it's going to come up a little bit higher than the other one. Now, some people believe the smile should go all the way over to the smile line, and on some people it does. Not everybody it does. So we're going to keep this smile really simple. I'm not even sure I'm going to have an opening there because carving teeth kind of gives people the willies. But then we're going to do this, and then we're going to work on the chin because we're going to have some issues with that cut right there where we brought the face all the way down. Hold it there for a minute so you can see what we've done. I'll turn it up so you see the cheekbones are sticking out. They need some shaping and some finishing, but we're okay on that one. I think he's looking pretty good. I think this guy is looking like a fella you'd want to spend some time with. If you had a horse and you want to ride along with him, he'd probably tell you some stories. Just trim that down, that edge a little bit. From here on out, when we get in here, it's going to be hard to see some of those, so I'll try to hold them up a little closer when I do that. All right, let's grab a very flexible knife. Well, I like to use this Drake knife here. I've had, I couldn't tell you, 10, 12 years. I've got a couple more that are that size, but I've got one even smaller. This one, when I'm doing really tight spots, it allows me to use it like a pencil. And so I can get right in here and do some carvings, but it's not a very big blade. So I have to be real careful when I'm carving with this one because it acts like a pencil, but it's wide at the back. So I have to really choke up on this. But maybe you've seen carvers do, treat this like a pencil, and I'm going to try to do that. Again, I'm gonna erase my lines by carving. I'm going to put them back in. And I'm just going to go back in there and put my carving lines back in again. And again, if you try to draw on surfaces that aren't necessarily flat and hard to get to, you have a hard time sometimes. Excuse me, pardon me for the cough. I'm going to come back in here. And I'm just going to make a deep stab cut right there in the corner. Right where the upper eyelid and the lower eyelid come together. Right there. I want to make a stab cut. And I'm going to go fairly deeply in there, but not grotesquely deep. It should be deep enough to where the knife stays in there. When I carve, I want to go deep, and then as I come across the eyeball, I'm lifting it out so that in the middle, I'm almost completely out of the cut. And then as I go down to the other end, I'm going back in. So I'm going deep. I'm dragging it out and I'm laying that knife so that you can almost see the tip. And then when I get out here, that one gets a little deep as well. So deep, almost out, deep. I'm going to, just so I match, I'm going to make the exact same ones on the other side. So I got deep, come back out. Outside, we're going to go deep again. If you have to go from both sides, that's okay. It's okay to do it that way. Deep, pull back out. Okay? This is the easiest eye to do because you're right-handed. This is the hardest. So for me, I always do the left side first, my left, the carvings right side. Because if I screw this up, I can make that other side to match because I'm holding it straight up. I'm carving this side upside down, which makes it a little bit more difficult because if you make a mistake, it's hard to see it until you turn it right back up. So I've got the bottom eyelid cut in. I want to do the top eyelid. Again, deep, and I'm going to come around halfway, and then the other side I do halfway as well. Make those two match, and then come in here and make this one. It won't be straight up and down. It'll have a little bit of curve to it. So I drew the line straight up and down so you saw what I was doing, and it allows me to get in there, and I've made that cut. So now what I want to do is I want to take a chip out of the corner. That chip out of that corner, it helps make that eye look round. I want to chip out of this corner as well, and a chip out of that upper corner. I don't know if you can see that yet because it might be too far away, but we're trying to get that eyeball rounded. We're right in here trying to round that eyeball. Okay. Bottom of the eyelid I do, just lay it down and just take off a little sliver. I just need to separate the bottom eyelid from the eye. And then the top eyelid, if I've gone deep enough, I can come back in here and I can undercut a little sliver. Maybe you see that sliver there. I'm going to do that same thing over here, and if your knives are not sharp, you didn't make those cuts clean enough, you'll have some chew up to clean up with. I'm cutting right back in here where I made that cut. Okay. The idea of this is to make it look like it's got a deep cut in here and a deep cut here, and by the time you're rounding, time you're done, this eyeball, when you paint it, it's got a flat enough surface to paint, but it's round enough so that it looks like the eyeball is round. Don't know if you can see that. I'm still cleaning my mess up here, or cleaning up my little cuts. Let me get that little fuzzy out right there. It's bothering me. I don't like it when they bother me. Hopefully you can see that. That eyeball is almost looking like it's rounded, because we're not only rounding this way, we're rounding this way. So your eyeball is rounded from left to right or right to left, and it's rounded from top to bottom or bottom to top. So we got to take that into consideration. This is really an orb in a socket, and that orb, you should only be able to see part of it, but you should see enough of it so that it looks like it has been rounded. And if you have to come in here and do that too many times, pretty soon you end up with an eye that is just too deep, which means now you got to go out and you got to clean out the fuzzies. No big deal as long as you know how to do that. So I'm accentuating my cuts because, all right, looks kind of rounded to me. Let's do the other side. We get this cut in, out, back in. I'm going to go from halfway up here to make that bottom. Let me get my finger anchored out of the way. I'm going to make that cut down to here. Hopefully those cuts line up because I'm doing it that way. Then I'm going to come back in here and I'm going to make that one cut and match up with the point in there. So when I come back out here, I should be able to lay my knife. And again, this is hard to get into, so whatever you need to do, move that hat back a little bit more of a tilt on his head rather than you coming right down over the eyes. You're going to get down in these corners. So I got 2 corners to get to, 2 corners to dig parts out. I know we tell you not to pry with your knife, but we all do it. Just be careful. Okay. Once I've done that, I'm going to come in and I'm going to cut down to the bottom eyelid. Just trying to make it round. I feel like I got dropsy today. I can't hang on to nothing. Probably my sanity as well. And then I'm going to come up here and undercut the upper eyelid. And do that to the inside as well. One of the good little tools you can buy yourself was one of these. And I use this a lot when I'm doing delicate work like this because I don't want to get in there and I see a little sliver in there. I don't want to get in there 4 or 5 times. I want to get in there one time. And if I can get in there one time and get it out, I'm good. If I have to play around with it too much, then I've got my work cut out for me, and I don't like that much work. All I'm doing is cleaning up here. Taking out all the little pieces in there. I'm just about to the point where I have to start wearing cheaters. You know, those things that allow you to see better by having magnified lenses on them. And I'm still vain enough that I don't want to give into them yet, although I do sometimes. So anyway, let me draw that in. We've got an eyeball over here, and we got an eyeball over here. And so this guy is looking this way. And one cheek is a little bit higher than the other. And to accentuate that, what we'll do over here, let me find a wide gouge. We'll come over here and we'll just thin down this bag up here. So now it makes it look like that cheek is a little bit higher than this one, and I've lost nothing. I'm going to trim down these cheeks. Take away some of these angular cuts. Nothing wrong with angular cuts if that's what you're aiming for. Okay. And so now on carving eyes, the one thing you want to make sure is to make them look realistic without looking too much. So this guy's going to have a couple of crow's feet out here, but his bag is going to come like that. So this one's going to do the same thing. He's got a couple of crow's feet out here. And then the bag is probably not showing you that very well. Make sure that bag comes together where the upper eyelid and the lower eyelid meet, and understand that the upper eyelid goes over the lower eyelid, not the other way. So the easiest way to do that is to go back to this little gouge here. Little gouge that we had to start with. And I'm just going to take out that line that I drew in there. I don't have to go real deep, just deep enough to show that he's got some kind of a bag there. If you're not sure what to do, go make that expression in the mirror. Take a picture of it, and you can get close to it. All right, we're just about done with those eyes. Although we'll come back here in a little bit and we'll make some eyelids up under those eyebrows there. Let's work on that face a little bit. A little bit more of the mouth. I want to go straight in. If you like where you've drawn it, I want to go straight in at the corners. Fairly deep, drag that knife across your line, whatever you drew, make that cut. Again, you've got a lot of ways of making this cut look like that. If you like them as smiling, make a cut down like this at the corner of the mouth, and make a deep chip right there, and another deep chip right there. And all you've done is given him some dimension to that smile. This one's the same way. I'm going in, I guess, about 1/8 of an inch with my medium knife. Pop that chip out. I like to round the bottom lip, the top lip, and just take a little sliver off. All the way around. Okay, see his mouth? I'll do the same thing with the rounding over the bottom lip, although I usually take a bigger stab at that one and take out more on the bottom than I do on the top. Okay, make that cut in there fairly deep now, because you're going to create a shadow. I'm just going to take out a little sliver. It looks like he's not pursing his lips, but they're not separated either. Okay, I want to give him a, again, I'm not an anatomy guy, I don't know these names, but the snot trough is what I've always called it. Because isn't that what it is? Isn't that where your snot rolls down? Unless you've got a mustache, and then it just kind of collects in there. I did it with a small one, then I'm doing it with a bigger one because I like that bigger one. Taking a little bit more off this mouth because I want it to have a little bit more of a smile than what he's got. Okay, there's your upper lip. Again, you could do Cupid's bow. Cupid's bow is where it does kind of like this and comes up. But to me, on this guy, that's not the look I'm looking for. He's looking like a fellow that's having a good time. Take a wide gouge. I say wide, and this one isn't really that wide, but it's about 1 centimeter or 3/8, and I'm going to go under that lip, and I want to take off a little bit at a time. You got to be real careful because this can look overdone. Give him a little bit of shape because his chin's going to be back a little bit more. Come back in with another one and deepen that a little bit. That's not what I want. This is the one I want. I grabbed a V-tool. That wouldn't have been good. I'd have had a hard time hiding that cut. Just sticking his lip out. Okay. This side is sticking out a little bit more than this, so I'm just going to come back in here and undercut a little bit more into the nose. That's better. That's better. And I'm going to take my knife and I'm just going to round that chin over. I'm not going to give it much of a shape yet because I just want to round over. Follow that all the way down to the neck. Just get rid of those cut marks right now. We're not trying to give it any particular shape. We're going to get rid of our drawing lines and our cut marks down to the neck. Still got more in there. Could even give them an Adam's apple with that little bit left over, but I doubt that we'll have enough room. To ease that transition between the neck and the mount, neck and the head, we left some cut marks in there when we used it on the drill press. So we'll just ease that transition a little bit all the way around. I just had to sit back and look at him for just a minute. Narrow down that jaw just a little bit. So it looks like it goes down into that neck pretty well. Okay, a lot of times I'll come back in here with a small V tool and just accentuate that lip. Now a lot of times what you can do is take this part right here and angle it right up into there, but I don't think I'm gonna do that. I'm just gonna trim that corner out a little bit so that it looks like it's less of a sharp angle and more of a tuck. And then those sharp edges on that lip, just round them over a little bit. You don't need to take off much. You're just rounding that lip so it doesn't look like he's trying to purse it. And I'm going to take it right in that groove I made and just make a cut. And it gives the impression that it's a little bit separated. There's a little bit of a shadow back in there. If you're not sure that's enough of a shadow, cut it and then come back in and take just the slightest little sliver out of there. You don't need much. Got a little bit here and a little bit there. Come on out of there. You know you don't want to be in there. There we go. I like it, fella. I like this fella. Got a little booger here I clean up a little bit. That looks better. Let me dust him off a little bit here. Okay. Said we was going to work on those eyebrows. Go back to your little V tool, or little gouge, sorry. And we're just going to undercut that eyebrow. Make sure it doesn't split out like that. We'll fix that in a minute, because there's an eye hair going to go in there. And with that, let me fix that eyebrow a little bit so it doesn't stick out a little bit. With that, I'm going to come in here with a small V tool. I've got a mini V. I don't even know what size this is. It's like 1/16 of an inch. That baby is real little. Yeah, it's 1/16 of an inch. That groove that I just cut, follow that up to the middle. You've made an eyelid. Be careful as you come around. And you've made an eyelid all the way around. Stay away from the upper eyelid because it'll break off on you. See what I'm talking about? There's that eyelid right there. Goes all the way down into that groove that we cut way down in there at the beginning. Do the same thing over here. Real careful. A lot of the split off happens when the ears of the V-tool get down below the wood. As long as the ears are above the wood, you're usually cutting okay. Once they get down below the level of the wood, they have a tendency to want to split. Come back and take that a little bit out too. And I believe we've got a face. Now the next thing I would do was trying to trim some of this eyebrow up. So I'm going to make a separation here for one eyebrow and a separation here. Trying to do it so you can see it and I can see it too, and I can't see it if you can. Separating those eyebrows. And then we're just going to use a little weavy. I call it the weavy because it's real tiny. If you want to do it with a gouge, you can. It's a real small gouge. And I'm just going to create the illusion of some hair. Doesn't need much. He ain't a bushy browed guy. But just a few little hairs in there. And be careful as you go across because this is thin and it'll want to break off on you. But you don't need much. I told you at the beginning of this that we might have a hard time getting all this detail in there, but I think we've done okay so far. So far. You know, good Lord willing and the creek don't rise. I'm sure that's an old farming saying that I heard when I was a kid. Good Lord willing and the creek don't rise and flood our land, we'll have a good crop this year. I don't know. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. Give it a little bit of hair. We'll follow that same process. Actually, right in there, right in here, I've got a gouge that I want out of there. So take the little gouge. Come in here and cut that off with the knife. And we got that. Now, one of the things I usually do later, but I'm going to go ahead and do now, separate the head from the hat, because there doesn't look a whole lot of separation. Take my knife, lay it flat on the head, and push it up into the hat. I'm doing this now because once I cut the hat in, I won't know how thick to do this. Make that cut there, and then come back on the hat side and take out a sliver. When you take out that sliver, look what happens to that hat. Get that little shiver out of there. It looks like the head goes up under that hat. So again, I'll do it on this side. We'll lay it on the side of the head, where the head and the hat come together. And then I'm going to come back in here and take that little sliver out. And it looks like the head goes up under the hat. Little cleanup to do right in there. Not a big deal. And you might have to come in and now where you cut out hair or cut out wood, come back and give him a little more of the hair stuff in there. But we're good. We're good. I like that. When we tool the sideburns, well, that's where that cut will stop. It'll stop right there, and we won't bother with it back here because nobody's looking back there to say, hey, does that hair go up under that hat? We're going to leave it right there. I'm going to call this video good. We're about 46 minutes, I think, according to the timer. And so we're getting really, really close to being done with this fella. I appreciate you hanging in with me. I appreciate you staying along. And then any comments you have for making it better, where you can see better or whatever I can do explaining better, please put them in the chat or in the comments after I post this video. So I'm going to call this one good, and we're going to start the other one. I'll see you in the next video. Appreciate it.